entities against the Saudi government for what happened on 9/11, that would be a very big deal. It would make the Saudis very angry. The president is about to go there this week. He's going to hear about it. Why do you believe this would be a good idea?
Well, first of all, what's surprising me is why this all of a sudden become controversial. That this law was actually passed through the Senate unanimously back at the end of 2014. I think what you really need to take a look at is the Saudi reaction. They're talking about selling potentially $750 billion of U.S. government bonds. There's the problem. That America has $19 trillion worth of debt, and you have that debt held by foreign governments like the Saudis, like China, that could really do some real economic harm. So I mean, we need to focus on the real problem there, which is our enormous debt and the size of government.
No question, the debt is huge, and it doesn't get talked about enough. But this has a foreign policy implication to it that goes beyond fiscal policy. They're saying, look, we're making that threat because you're threatening us. We don't allow people to sue the U.S. government for all the stuff that you guys do with your huge footprint. You know, if citizens are responsible, then they're the problem. If your companies are then they're the problem. Why aren't you allowing us that same freedom as Saudis? Those were Saudi citizens involved on 9/11, not the Saudi government. Al-Qaeda was trying to take us out. Why would we have been a part of their own violence?
Again, I'm saying, why is all of a sudden this thing controversial?
Because it's very real.
I know.
It's real right now.
We'll be looking into this and see exactly what the administration is saying, what the Saudis are saying. But from my standpoint, if there are people in Saudi Arabia that are culpable for this, let's face it, we certainly froze Iranian assets.
Sure.
I'm not saying you freeze all of Saudi's assets. That's what they're concerned about. But those individuals in Saudi Arabia that could be culpable for this should be held accountable.
But why does that then include going after the government there?
Well, again, I think you need to take a look at this in a very narrowed way. I think that bill actually attempted to do that. If it doesn't do it in a very narrow, focused way, I think we need to take a look at that. But again, this was non-controversial in 2014. Something has changed. New information's obviously come to the fore, or the administration's finally paying attention. We'll take a look at it. Again, I think we could probably more narrowly focus that so that the victims actually do have their rights.
All right, another thing that gets talked about a little bit and then it fades away. In New Hampshire, all the candidates were talking about heroin. It's on the march in this country like we have never seen it before. The dealers got smart. They made it smokable. They're starting to use synthetics. They're making it more concentrated so it's more quickly addictive. It's bubbling up into popular culture now. SNL, in my opinion, did a really bad joke this weekend, joking about heroin as something that's easier to take for soccer moms and stuff. It's a huge problem. You believe in it very acutely as a war that has to be fought. What are you seeing? You're saying we want to talk about the border. We're missing the biggest issue.
Yeah.
How so?
Well, it's not going away from my standpoint. We held 2 hearings last week, one in Washington, D.C., one in Pewaukee, Wisconsin. And one of the points I've been trying to make, as chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, we've held 15 hearings on border security alone. My conclusion is the root cause of our unsecured border is our insatiable demand for drugs. You take a look at the price of heroin. In the early 80s, it was about over $3,000 a gram. Now it's down to $100 a gram because our borders are so porous. Chris, that's $10 a dose. This is like a craft beer here in Wisconsin. That's in a fancy restaurant here in New York. That's just, that's $10 a glass of beer. So, I mean, that's the problem is you have such an enormous supply feeding that demand, but we've got to use an all-of-the-above strategy. We have to look at treatment. We've got to address that demand side. We've been very effective at reducing the use of tobacco. I know that the same campaigns have not been effective against drugs. We've got to refocus our efforts, address the demand side, but we also have to interdict the supply as well.